Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of CR Live. For those of you that joined last week, you'll know what a crazy 1 hour that was. It was probably one of the most exhilarating hours I've had in years. This session that we've got today for episode 2 is a little bit different. Welcome to all of those of you that I can see are connecting in from around Australia. We've got Lainey Good, I just saw joining from Tasmania. We've got Jane Sorby, who's just said she's in Sydney. We've also got a few other people joining. Daniel from Sydney, Colin from Hawkesbury in New South Wales. Welcome to all of you. I can see some familiar names in there as well. If you've got any questions as we're going along in the next half an hour, then do let us know. Dorothy and the team will be making sure we get those through to me. We've got a little bit of a different format for the next half hour, but today we're going to be talking about small business, innovation, and the fear of failure. Why do people fear change? What's behind it? And some real stories on the street that we've gone out and filmed this week to give us a bit of a perspective of what's happening on the front line with Australian business. We're changing things up. Each week we'll try something new, but I'm very confident you're going to find this half hour a little bit different to last week. Our first person that we're going to go and have a chat to today is a very good friend of mine. She is the founder of the first palm oil free certified baby formula brand in the world. It's a company called LITTLEOAK. The founder is a friend of mine, Elke Pascoe. Elke, welcome to the CR Live show. Thanks for joining us here this morning.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Thank you. It's great to be here.
It is big international field, Melbourne to Sydney. It's gone crazy. I want to know a little bit more about LITTLEOAK and how you came up with the idea. I mean, your background historically has been in the big corporate space. You've been in healthcare, pharmaceutical. You're a comms expert, a very renowned one at that. How did you then get into a baby formula company?
Well, do you know, I think it goes back nearly, longer than I can appreciate, even, back to my daughter's age, who's, she's 7, 8 now at the moment. And I remember being in school and watching a nurse who'd come back from Africa with footage of hungry children and unwell children. It was that point, I think, when the seed was initially sown, because I thought, right, I'm going to do something to help these children. And I think in my head at that time, that meant becoming a doctor. Fast forward on, a good, few decades, and the medical degree didn't come, but that aspiration to help children still sort of lived inside of me. And I think going into healthcare and pharmaceuticals was probably the closest, at that point that I could get. And after, after a good number of years in that space, I kind of got to a point where I thought, right, really, is this really all that satisfying? Can I jump out of bed every day and feel excited about what I was doing? So I really, sort of questioned about 4 years ago. I thought, right, it's time to do something that's going to get you really excited and what you're passionate about. And there was a sort of a trip with my son who had a terrible skin condition. And cut a long story short, I kind of really started thinking about how I could get back into helping children. Yep. And it was one of those points where I think I have 2 children. I breastfed them, I gave them infant formula, but at the time I really didn't understand what was going into them. Somebody just told me, give this to your child and it will be fine. But at that point in time, I remember sitting there and looking at infant formula on the shelves one day and thought, oh my goodness, look at these ingredients. Who knew that this is the stuff that goes into these formulas? So I spent probably the better part of, nearly 2 years as just sort of really investigating the industry and how it was made and who was doing what. And I got to the point where even if I made no money from this at all, I really felt like I had to, I had a responsibility to try and do something better, not just for mums, but more importantly for these children that, I'm so passionate about helping.
And apart from being the first certified palm oil free organic, and there's a lot of words thrown in there, but company in the world, what makes you different? What was the real purpose that you set out to be different and separate yourselves?
Well, I think the big thing is really waking up every morning with that passion about truly helping children. When I started this business, it was really about putting the margins and the money aside and really creating something that was, if mums couldn't breastfeed, what was the next best thing they could give their child that they could feel confident about? So when I sort of decided that, this was something I was going to have to do, I sat down with some of the best health experts that I've worked with in my past and said, what goes into this product and what doesn't? I don't even want to think about money. Just tell me what it looks like. And we got that sort of, literally a recipe, not a recipe, but a formulation on a white piece of paper. And then we found, our R&D manager, who then made our sort of, realize that dream. But really, what drives us and the decisions that we make every day is what's best for the child. So, for us, every ingredient that goes into our formula comes down, we really assess it for, it doesn't need to be in there. Just, is that in breast milk? And if it's going to be in there, where's the most natural source we can find it from? Money, don't think money. And that's how we started with, there's going to be absolutely no palm oil in our, in our formula. I mean, obviously the reason for that is twofold. We obviously have the environmental impact of palm oil, but more importantly, palm oil actually impacts the absorption of calcium, DHA, and fats in babies. Yeah. So for us, it was a no-brainer. There was just no palm oil, no derivatives, nothing. So we're really proud to be the first infant formula in the world to be certified 100% palm oil free, for all the babies around the world. And that then went on to become, the first in the world to use flaxseed oil instead of canola, using whole goat milk as a base because it's more closely aligned to human breast milk than cow milk, and really making sure that DHA, our algal, from algal sources. So, we really don't cut any corners in terms of how we put our formulation together.
I remember talking to you as you were going through that process. That was an incredible part of the journey that took quite a lot of time. My family and I, we're shameless, massive supporters of LITTLEOAK. My little daughter, my 18-month-old, actually is one of your big poster child. And there she is, a shameless plug for my little girl, Nixon. She'll be embarrassed on her 18th when we pull this out. But I mean, we're in a crazy world now. COVID-19 flipped everything. What was the impact that had on LITTLEOAK, Elke? How did that impact you guys?
Well, I mean, probably like every business owner at this point in our life cycle, you think, oh my goodness, it just, what are we going to do and how are we going to overcome this and make sure we can survive it? We were very quick to make sure, get a workshop and make sure we had a plan in place. I mean, we're fortunate because our formula, we are a formula. We're essential product for many families. And, we very quickly, I suppose, pivoted to offer parents, free home delivery, so they didn't have to go to the store to buy it. Yeah. We made sure we could get new, formats in place that were, a little bit cheaper. Just really respond quickly to what parents wanted and needed at that point in time. And I suppose in many ways we've been able to kind of see ourselves grow a little bit. We kept pushing really hard with the retailers. The very fact that we are here for Australian mums, and New Zealand mums and dads. I hope we really do see that. We really do see that support from our local consumers because. Really at this, even in a time of crisis, there truly is a flight to quality. So we're certainly seeing that. And we're also seeing, that sort of greater support or certainly an appetite to support locally made and locally, born companies and products.
And I think, look, Australia, there's no doubt at all, is there? I mean, Australian consumers love supporting independent, homegrown Aussie brands, which, I mean, you're an Australian, New Zealand business. You fit exactly into that category. And I mean, this market is huge. And this side of the world, it's a really big thing for us. If we look then at the duopoly, as they're called, the Coles, the Woolies, the big monsters in our world of grocery, the supermarket business, how do they need to step the game up, Elke, to really get Australian homegrown brands onto our shelves? Why aren't they doing this quicker and better? What's going wrong here?
Well, I think it's important to say that our little brand has been really well supported by the independents. So that the Ritchie's IGAs, which I know, which is where you buy your LITTLEOAK from. Yep. Thank you so much for that. We've got the Drakes down in South Australia and Queensland. The Foodlands. They've been really supportive of our brand, and a number of the pharmacies and Costco. We can't thank all our partners enough. The big two, obviously, as every new startup brand faces, are a challenge. We see now a number of our consumers coming in. The feedback we get is, why are you not in Coles and Woolworths? And we're certainly trying our hardest to make sure that we can cut through the whole Coles and Woolworths barriers. And in many ways, we hope that they'll certainly consider the range of views. They'll consider us on the next round. And I really think it's important that they do so, because you've got a brand in Australia and New Zealand that really here just for Australian and New Zealand consumers, and that really should be something that they consider, because it's here that they should be supporting local businesses more than ever before. So I think I would like to think that as every business through this COVID piece, it's reimagining the way they do business, that perhaps even the big two will sit up and sort of take a real kind of a good look at how they can genuinely support local businesses here in Australia.
And this has been a topic. I was on ABC just a couple of days ago talking about supporting Australian manufacturing and business, and there's never been a more critical time. Elke, thank you so much. Keep us in touch with how you go with Coles and Woolies. All the best luck to you, and we'll be chatting soon. Thank you for being on today.
Thanks, Chris.
Now, we also, this week, I went out to one of my favourite coffee shops in the suburbs of Melbourne. It is a place called Boosa, and it's actually a coffee shop I've been going to for years. We went and had a chat with them around the emotional impact that they felt when the restrictions came in place, when Daniel Andrews and Scott Morrison started locking the country down. Take a look at this chat we had with them just a couple of days ago. Tami, great to be here today. I've known you guys for a few years. What's the last few weeks been like here in Boosa?
It's been a roller coaster of emotions, up and down. I think now the past maybe fortnight we're sort of getting into more of a system, and it, to be honest, feels like we're just learning a totally new business. From what we've been doing. So previously, obviously, we had the dine-in experience, and now we're learning a takeaway business. We've done deliveries now, and we're doing gift boxes, Mother's Day boxes, deli, everything we can to stay open and survive, basically.
When this all started, how many weeks ago was it now? It feels like
every day is the same for me now, so it's all melded into one. So. Maybe a month or two,
Yeah, so
end of March, I think.
That's right. So when I remember that day it happened, I came in here, I saw your husband, who you're partners with in this business. His face was ashen, he was white. Since that day to the day now we're stood here, where Premier Daniel Andrews just yesterday announced that he's going to start easing restrictions as of tomorrow, pretty much. What have the numbers looked like? Because that day when I came in, it was a question mark whether you'd even exist in a week's time. Where are we at now compared to that?
When it first happened and we first found out, we had, I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think 24 hours notice we had that by 12 o'clock on the Monday, I remember it was a Monday, we would have to start doing takeaways only. And to be honest, it felt like we'd been given bad news, like someone was dying or someone had died or grief, or that's the only way I can describe it. We were so anxious, we felt sick to the stomach, but the local support was amazing, and we had a lot of amazing customers that came in and said to us, listen, we're still coming, we're still going to get coffees, it's a different format, but we're still here. And that's been the most amazing part.
I notice you're still not on Uber Eats or any of the major platforms. How have you done deliveries without being on the major platforms, and why aren't you on one of those major platforms?
I think when we were open normal trade before, running a small business, you've got so many things to deal with. So deliveries was just like, I guess, just something in the background. We considered Uber. We actually registered with Uber before Corona hit.
I think you've even loaded your menus, you were saying, into
Yes, we loaded our menus, everything, and then we just never turned on the button.
What's the reason for that? Why?
To be honest, like fear. Like 35% commission is huge, and there's just no room. There's no more room in small business. The profit margins are so low anyway that a 35% cut would kill us. You've got to think about your service. You're an experience-based business. People come and want to have an experience in the cafe, and if you're going to back your kitchen up with lots of dockets, people that are sitting are going to wait longer for their food, and their customer service is going to be maybe worse off because of that. So what are the positives? What are the positives of a 35% commission, longer wait time?
I mean, you've gone from a business that had people physically in here. I mean, we're in amongst the chaos area where you used to have tables and people sat having lunch and breakfast, and you've suddenly become this overnight delivery business. How have you done that without going on to one of the major
we
platforms?
kind of did our research, and we were looking at what was happening all over the world, and a lot of businesses weren't even allowed to do takeaways anymore, so people weren't allowed to come and get a takeaway coffee. So we thought the only way we would be able to stay open is if we did deliveries. So we had an emergency meeting after we heard all the announcements, the night of. And the next day we started doing deliveries. So there was no process. It was just like, this is what we have to do to survive.
And you've done those deliveries yourself?
So we're doing everything in-house, all ourselves.
Wow.
If you've received a delivery, it's from my husband usually, Atam. And to be honest, people are so excited. People are so excited to see him at the door with a delivery. They want to support local businesses, so when they see that it's us doing the deliveries, it's like super exciting for them. And also, like a small thing, but like for us, everything is so important to us, and we're a bit of a control freaks. So leaving it to Uber, forget the commission, but leaving it to Uber to then do a couple of drop-offs and take longer, and the food might not arrive in a good, good quality. So that's sort of a huge consideration for us as well. So
one of the things I remember, again, coming back to your husband, that day that I came in here when the proverbial had hit the fan. It had all gone crazy, and one of the things I said to your husband was, I'm going to be coming in here every morning and supporting you. And you give us a bit of an insight on how the community have helped in supporting you.
Yes, so basically we've received a phone call that night after they announced that we'd only be allowed to do takeaways, and it was from a company called KG Electronics. So I was at home with my little daughter, and my husband called me and he said to me, Tami, and he burst into tears. And like, even just thinking about it now, genuinely, it makes me emotional because really I've seen him cry maybe twice in my life. We've been together 15 years. So he's not a crying person. He doesn't cry a lot. And I thought something had happened, or someone had, sick, or I don't know. And he said to me, Doron from KG Electronic called, and he's told us that he will order lunch from us every single day until everything goes back to normal with his staff. And we're not talking 3 lunches a day, we're talking $500 to $600 orders daily, which is huge, and it's allowed us to maintain a few permanent staff. So our kitchen, we've got a couple of chefs on, and our bar. So that was just, we've never seen anything like that before, and it was a really, I guess, a confidence builder for us, because it allowed us to remain working. And he's been doing that every single day since this all happened. So
I can see the reaction that's having just talking to you now. No, I can see it, and that restores, apart from anything, my faith in humanity. But I mean, as with any business now, we're all using, or we should all be using this as an opportunity to examine everything that we've got. Whether you're a high street cafe like you guys, or if you're a pharmacy across the road, or a butcher. I mean, this is the best time we've ever had to look at your business and examine it. How's that? Is that what you're doing?
We have learned more about our business in this past 6 weeks than we have in 10 years that we've been in cafes and owning our own businesses. Like, it's crazy.
And so we're in that week now where Daniel Andrews is going to start easing some of the restrictions. Is that going to have an impact on you? Is it going to change anything? Or
I mean, initially I was actually quite worried, because 10 people, allowing 10 people in a business at a time is not feasible for us. If I have to put on 3 more staff to 10 customers at a time, that's not feasible. With his announcements saying that he said for the month of May we're not going to be able to be open, I think he's actually supporting businesses like us, which is really positive, and it's really heartwarming for us. We can see that they're trying to do their best to help us, and just one step at a time. I guess we'll wait for the next update, and we'll wait for the new guidelines, and we also need time to prepare now to go back to normal, because back to normal is not normal for us. We have a deli section that we're selling hummus and tahini. I had a customer message me yesterday and said to me, I'm actually sad, like I don't want that to go away. I want you guys to still do that when we reopen. So we need to kind of reconsider everything. And I know there's going to be a few new guidelines about menus, and we're not allowed to have reusable menus now,
Yeah.
I think. So there's so many things to consider and understand. So yeah, we need time to prepare for that.
I'm fascinated to see where you go with this over the next few months. Tami, it's been great to come in here and chat to you behind the scenes. We'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks very much to Tami from Boosa and her husband there. To chat a bit more about this, we've brought our resident psychologist back, the expert Sabina Reid. Sabina, welcome to CR Live again. You're in a different place this week, I think.
I am. I move around a bit. New background. And brand different background.
We saw heaps of emotion in there, Sabina. There was a lot of things going on. There was, Tami even mentioned, it's a bit like there was a death in the family at one point. What's going on in a business owner's head there?
I thought it was wonderful that Tammy's able to identify her feelings and express them in such an articulate way, because grief is such a normal experience or response to what we're experiencing now, particularly in small business. And I always define grief as the difference between where we are now and where we thought we would be. And doesn't that perfectly describe Tammy's experience? She never in her wildest dreams thought their business would be dealing with the challenges that they're facing now. So there's a very real sense of grief there. But what we need to do with these difficult emotions like grief, she talked about needing to, she talked about wanting to feel in control, I think. And she said she'd learned more than she'd ever learned in this period of challenging times. So what we need to do is when we feel these difficult emotions, they are a cue to do something different. If we feel grief, if we feel fear, instead of sort of drowning in them, they're a call to action. What can I do differently than what I've been doing?
And I think that we've all had that feeling over the last few weeks, certainly, around, my God, the world's exploded. We've had a bomb go off in our front driveway. When we get those feelings, if we're feeling like we can't do anything with that, and it's just this frozen expression that we almost go into of this not knowing what to do, what do we need to start doing there to be able to either pick ourselves back up or hit a place where we can then start working out what to do? Where do we need to go?
So what you're really referring to there is this idea of paralysis, which comes in the fear. And when we feel that paralysis, of course, we feel stuck. And we often look back at what we don't want. We know what we don't want to feel, what we don't want to experience. And what we need to do in times like these is actually look forward. What is it that, how do we want the future to look? How do we want this afternoon? How do we want tomorrow to look? So we really need to draw sort of a metaphoric line in the sand, if you like, to say, instead of running from the fear and the confusion and the chaos, what is it that I'm moving towards? Because it's going to be different than where I've come from.
And I love earlier you talked around how well Tami had articulated her feelings there. I mean, we're all going through this, and I think we're all also understanding how to be a bit more open. I think one of the things that's really important is realizing that it's a cliched saying that everyone's throwing out there, but we are all in this at the same time. And that to some people is a little bit of a reassurance that it's not just us on our own going through this.
That's a really important point. And I think if I had to define people into two camps, not just at this time, but forever, it's those that feel that we need to do life alone, in that we have to sort out our own solutions, we have to come up with our own answers, we need to use our own resources. And then camp B is a group of people who believe that other people are here to help us, that if you ask, you will receive, that there's an abundance of support. And this is really very much a mindset. And I think Tami very clearly had that belief that others are here to support me. And if I ask for their help, they will lean in any way they can. And that was her experience. So I think that's another good takeaway if you're not just a small business owner, but just a human on the planet. Do I believe that other people are here to support me? Or do I feel, and this is something that we learn in our younger years, you know, in our family of origin, really. If I ask for help, are my caregivers going to respond, or do I kind of have to work it out myself? A lot of people have had that experience, so they take that template with them into business and adulthood and beyond. So I think it's a useful question to ask myself, what is it that I believe other people can do for me? And of course, in return, what can I do for other people? And it's that kind of mindset that helps us move forward when we're feeling this sense of paralysis and fear.
Sabina, as always, thank you so much for your expert insights as our CR Live psychologist here. Without even getting on a couch, you're showing us what the future looks like and how we can deal with these emotions. Thank you again for being with us today. We're going to come back to Sabina in the next series that we have, talking about more insights into our behavior and what we need to be able to do to be future focused and deal with what's going on around us. But the next group I want to bring back is our tech panel. It's Rich Haler, a corporate IT superstar. He's been in the technology industry all of his working life. We've also got Gavin Reddrop, who's a web and digital expert. Guys, welcome back to the second episode of CR Live. We're on a hell of a ride here again. We've had a bit of a crazy week, and Gav, actually, we were allowed to talk about something that's pretty big in your life. You've had a little baby in the last few days.
Yeah, so last week it was under wraps a little bit because we hadn't announced it on Facebook when I was on the live last week. But yeah, we've had a little baby girl, little Addison Harley, who was born last Monday. So she's starting to grow and get bigger and looking cute as a button.
Good on you. Rich, also welcome back. I don't know whether I asked whether I could share this, but you actually had to have a coronavirus test this week, and you've been isolated for a few days in your office, haven't you?
Hey, Chris, nice to be back. Yeah, I can't believe you actually mentioned that, but that's absolutely right. I mean, I had a bit of a cold and a bit of a fever last weekend, and I had to go get tested early in the week, but happy to say it came back negative. So that's good news.
Great to see you guys again. We're going to go straight into it, Gav. You've been looking at some cool tech stuff over the last few days around web and online learning.
Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of great opportunities at the moment for jumping online as a small business, and especially if you've got a skill or a bit of a knowledge that you can share with an audience. There's some great sort of apps and out there such as Kajabi, Thinkific. There's heaps of them, Teachable, where you can actually produce and create your own online courses and put them on the web. You can sell them or give them away for free. It's sort of up to you. And a lot of universities and that sort of stuff are giving away some online courses at the moment as well. So it's a really good way to get your knowledge out there, build your audience, and actually connect with people in that human experience, even though we are so far apart, but also together in this at the same time.
And one of the other things you do is look at the big search terms in Google, things that are trending and are on the top of the list. What have you noticed in the last week that's trending and people are searching for across the web?
Yeah, so as part of my digital marketing agency, we're sort of always on track of what's happening with Google and Facebook advertising. And one of the big search term increases since March is how-to and DIY type searches. So there's been a lot of about 30% increase in how-to searches across Google. In particular, one was how to cut your own hair at home. So I know you've got the hairdresser coming on later, and one of the big increases has been the search for how to cut your own hair and building your own ISO mullets, I guess. But it sort of shows that great opportunity where people who do have a skill, as a hairdresser or something, can actually sort of create a proper how-to guide rather than some of these DIY jobs. But yeah, definitely a massive increase in how-to searches in the last few months.
Rich Haler, you definitely haven't been cutting your own hair. You're impeccably groomed to perfection, as you always are, as you're sat there. Tell us some of the things that you've been seeing in the crazy world of online and tech once you realized that you didn't have coronavirus this week.
Well, I mean, it's just that video that you took us through earlier with Tami. I mean, that was super interesting just to see, how small business, particularly in that hospitality industry, has pivoted and adapting to meet their evolving customer needs. What was really interesting with that interview is Tami mentioned, some of these traditional delivery companies, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, they charge upwards of about 35% commission. And what's been really interesting is over the research I've looked into is that there's some startups. Bopple is actually one, Hungry is another, actually a Melbourne-based startup. And what these guys have done, they typically have been provided in-venue dining convenience, providing digital menus through an app. So, customers actually sitting at their table can place orders and pay for their meals just right at their table. But these startups have actually are actually building web portals now to provide digital menus online at a much cheaper cost. I mean, we're looking at a subscription based of about $70 a month, or another business model is about 5% commission to allow customers to order online and then actually pick up those deliveries at their local restaurants.
Awesome. Thanks both to you guys for sharing your insights and your stories. Stay away from coronavirus this week. If you do have to go into isolation, make sure you stay online and connected. Thanks to you guys. We'll see you on our next episode of CR Live. The other story I want to share with you today is that we went and visited one of the biggest brands on our high street. We went to visit Toni&Guy in Brighton here in Melbourne to understand how Stuart had dealt with the shutdown when that came from the Australian government. Take a look at this story of when I went to have a chat with Stu this week. Stu, I've known you for 8-9 years. You are a Toni&Guy franchise owner here. I can't believe we're sat here chatting about something quite so chaotic. Take me back to the start of COVID-19 as a business owner. Walk me back through how you felt when the gravity of what had happened hit home.
Well, I've been a franchisee with the company for about 27 years, and this was the first time that I felt my livelihood was out of my kind of influence and out of my control. Yeah. So there was a high level of nervousness, anxiety, and I was preparing for the worst. I knew I had X amount of money in the bank and I could support the outgoings for a period of time, but beyond that, when everything was unfolding and there was so much uncertainty, I was contemplating what my life was going to be like post this if everything went, belly up.
You've had no precedence for this situation we're in. One of the most overused words at the moment is we're in unprecedented times. How did you try and frame up even beginning to deal with this, again as a business owner, but also as somebody that's an employer and you're looking after people? What did that look like for you?
It was interesting because the financial component of the situation we were in was not my focus at all. My main focus was the people, the team, our family really. And it was bizarre because I created this image in my head, a bit like the sinking ferry in Italy. I was completely committed to being the last man standing, and being there to the end and doing the best that I could by my team really. And so that was my main focus, was just to make the decisions based on what I was right for the safety of the people I employ, the safety of our clients, and what was right for the aspect of us being very much part of this kind of localized community and making our contribution to stemming the progression of the virus.
Talk me a bit through the community, the response and how you dealt with that, because as a high street business, you're on the very front of Brighton's high street here. How did you balance making a decision of what to do with also the messages that are coming up from higher up, from Toni&Guy, the CEO, the owner?
Yeah. Well, we had been in daily video conferencing as a group for probably a week before we made the decision to close. So it was great. The CEO was really steering us in a direction, but also very much being considerate to the general perspective of all of us as a group. Yeah. So I felt that I was quite involved in the overall decision, and as the uncertainty grew The anxiety amongst the team grew. It got to the point where we felt we really needed to close and protect everyone involved.
One of the things that, I mean, as a hair salon, as Toni&Guy, you've been actually able to stay open the entire time through the COVID-19 situation, but you actually made a decision to shut your doors. What was the reason for that, and how have you felt as you've gone along?
Yeah, that was interesting to be in the position where the government was saying we could remain open, but we felt as a global brand that we had to be on the front foot and make decisions that weren't focused around trying to retain some level of revenue. Because as far as I was concerned, there was no other reason to stay open unless it was about trying to get money in the till. And that wasn't the priority. The priority was safety for the community, safety for everyone that works for me. We felt we needed to make a stand and stand up for the safety of the people in the community rather than be seen to prioritising trying to make money.
Tell me, what's the biggest takeaway that you've had from this situation that we've been in, and what's the thing that's probably taken you a bit by surprise?
I think it's the recognition of the part that we play in people's lives. We are offering the opportunity for a majority of people coming in. We are the first environment they've come back to since we know things are somewhat under control here. And we're finding that the gratitude of people, yes, how they look, but more from the point of view that they're physically able to interact with other human beings, is made a huge part of their kind of feeling happy and investing into their mental health. It's really reinforced to me the privilege of being a hairdresser and able to make people feel great about themselves.
Thanks very much, Stu, for your insights there and for having a really frank chat. I'd like to bring in, I'm delighted to be able to bring in Dennis Langford now, the Chief Executive of Toni&Guy Australia. Dennis, welcome to the CR live show here on Thursday afternoon.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Stu is an amazing guy. I mean, you've known, in fact, you were telling me the other day that Stu was one of your graduates that you brought through when you were over in the UK.
Apprentice with us in Sloane Square in London when we started with the brand there. I was a senior hairdresser there, and Stuart came through the ranks, and we built up a great relationship, him and I. Got into a fair bit of trouble and so forth, and then we went our separate ways, and then we've rejoined again here in Australia. So it's been a tremendous journey with Stuart.
And Stu is an amazing guy. I've known him for 8-9 years now. I've seen various eras of his business, but you could really see and feel the emotion there from Stu as I was sat chatting to him about this environment. And he talked at the end there about it being a privilege to be a hairdresser in this environment. What's the response you've had from other salons across the Toni&Guy network in Australia? What's the thing that you've seen emotionally coming out of everyone?
It's interesting because some people decided to close when the hairdressing industry did not need to close. It wasn't mandatory for us to close. And probably one of the only countries in the world that's like that. We had anticipated that in Australia that all businesses would close down, including all hairdressers. That never happened. We followed the suit from the UK. So 3 days before the UK had a mandatory shutdown, and the UK Toni&Guy let us know about that. 3 days later, we made the decision to do the same thing. One of those things that came through, which is quite interesting, was the public at large. We had a lot of people contacting us through social media to really bag us out for being open as a brand. They don't focus on the smaller salons, they focus on us because we're a big brand. But we had a fair bit of hate mail coming through that we were still open. How could we do this sort of thing?
No way.
Now, the UK had a bit of the same stuff. We got a fair bit of that flack. So we wanted to be able to make that transition ourselves voluntarily before anybody else had. And for the same reasons that Stuart articulated there, was for the safety, because at that point, nobody knew about coronavirus and where it was headed. We had basic information around, and this is just us as hairdressers. We didn't have much to go on other than the best thing we can do is close our doors for the safety of our clients and our staff. And the way that it was being transmitted, the virus and so forth there, we had a bit of indication, but not really. At the end of the day, the best thing we could do was to close our doors and stop our places being a place where people could congregate. And that's why we did it.
This is a common thing. You talked there about almost this hate mail type onslaught that you got from certain members of the public. And I've heard this actually in a few other small businesses, particularly here in Australia, getting exactly the same thing. Legally, they were allowed to stay open, but they were still getting quite a bit of pressure from people that thought they shouldn't be open. Now that you have officially reopened as Toni&Guy across Australia, how have things gone in the last, because I think you've been open for pretty much just a week and a half or so now. How have things gone in the last week and a half?
Correct, really good. Look, we had when we first closed, because nobody knew when we would reopen. So we mentally tried to prepare a plan, and that plan was to close, who knows, whether it'll be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months. Yeah. But let's try it for 6 weeks there. So that was our plan, because that plan needed to have a marketing strategy behind it, okay? To be able to show them how to do their hair, not haircuts or colour at home, but other things about styling their hair, right? So there's a marketing strategy. So we planned that for 6 weeks. And the latter part of that 6 weeks was, how do we now plan to reopen? Now, ironically for us, it worked out really well for lifting some restrictions out there, and the curve being flattened in Australia. And Australia's done exceptionally well, that's for sure. So the timing was right for us to reopen. So we reopened softly. What I mean by that is that we reopened for access for our clients, not new clients, our existing clients, to be able to come into us. And when those clients came into us, we didn't advertise that we were open. We just contacted personally, phone call, called every client and said, we're going to be opening. Would you like to come back in and see us there? We do have some very stringent hygiene regulations in place. So please, if you can adhere to those, that's good. But if you can't do that, maybe let's leave it for another few months before you come in. So we put that in place, and it worked extremely well. We have a lot of clients coming into us now. I would say the majority of people aren't too worried about the hygiene restrictions as a generalization. We have some people that thank us for it. Thank you so much for doing those sorts of things.
As the CEO of arguably one of the biggest fashion hair brands in the world, if you were to chat with a smaller business that was getting this onslaught of pressure or abuse or hate mail, for want of a better term, what would your recommendation be of how they could deal with that from the experience you've had?
To promote the fact that they were going above and beyond the hygiene regulations. And for that, you need to really study and understand how the virus gets transmitted. No, we're not doctors at all, but with the basic knowledge that we've got, we know how to curb the spread of that by doing certain things. And the point being, you've got to promote that more and more for those sort of salons out there. The network of Toni&Guy, we're a very strong family, and the virus, it's brought some good things for us. It's brought our community of Toni&Guy in that fraternity is so much stronger. To jump on a Zoom meeting, which I knew they existed, but I never used one before. But to have 23 of our owners up there and we're talking face to face about stuff there and making decisions, because the brand of Toni&Guy, it's very family. We like to know the opinions of our owners as to what they want to do. So, like reiterated, that when we make the decision to close, if 20 of our 23 salons said, no, we want to stay open, we'd probably stay open, because there's no point forcing people to do something. So I would have had a different strategy with that and had different hygiene regulations put in place. But everybody in the group wanted to be able to close. And that's what we did.
One thing that's going to come out of this is we're certainly here on CR Live over the next few months, we're going to have a competition to find who's got the coolest studio. You're certainly ranking there at the very top of this list. What have you got going on in there? That's an amazing room there, Dennis.
Okay, well, this is my office, right? So on the wall it says, you're designed for accomplishment, engineered to success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. So when people come into my office, they see all of this. They see the world of Toni&Guy. There's another little quote on the wall over there. But they see all of these sorts of things. So when we have a chat about stuff, and I like steampunk, so over there you can see my steampunk laptop
Love it.
presenter. But the whole point, I guess, is it's an interesting environment. I want people to come in here and have a chat with me about whatever it might be, but to also be inspired. And that's why I have this stuff around me.
Dennis, CEO of Toni&Guy Australia, the guy with the least hair I've ever seen in Toni&Guy. Thank you so much for your time here this afternoon on CR Live. We'll be staying in touch. And that really is it for end of episode 2. We've had a whole different journey for you in the last 45 minutes. Thank you so much for being a part of today. Next week, we're going to be talking about the future of the events and travel industry. It's going to be a view into the future. What do we think it looks like with travel restrictions and international travel? How does Tourism Australia play into that? It's going to be a really exciting episode. Make sure you join us for next week. Stay in touch, share your thoughts, have your questions online. Thank you so much to everyone, including Saxton, our partners and sponsors here, and also to the incredible team at Show Division, to Linton, to Jace, and our technical director, Kieran McCrory. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time on CR Live.
Riddell.